One of my very favorite recipes, 1 bowl banana bread. Stay tuned. I don't know many people who don't like banana bread. And what else do you do with your bananas that are slightly overripe? So it's a little bit of a dismal day today where I live, and we've had a change of plans videotaping, and I thought, why not just do some banana bread? It's my favorite recipe because it's healthy and it only takes 1 bowl. So I also use that as an excuse to buy myself a new apron. So this came from the little shop down in our village, which I think is just memorable. So what makes this so healthy? Well, first of all, it can be made with whole wheat flour. I'm actually making it with all-purpose flour right now, but I have similar fantastic results with whole wheat flour. It's made with honey instead of sugar and a healthy oil. This honey actually came as a gift from my friend Tammy and back on the East Coast, so I'm anxious to use that. Salt, walnuts, 2 overripe bananas, a couple of eggs, and that's all it is. You just put them in the right order in the mixer and then it's ready to bake. So let's move over to the mixer and get started. Now I have to say, if you don't have a mixer, that's fine. You can do all of this by hand, but the whole idea is to put them in the order that they go in so that you have the best results. All right, the first thing is 1/3 cup of oil. And you're going to mix the oil and honey together. I always put the oil in first, although it really doesn't matter at this point. 1/2 cup of honey. Now I reserve a little bit of the oil and swish it around a little bit before I add it, so that when I put my honey in, it comes out a little bit easier out of the cup. So this is 1/2 cup of honey, and do you see how nicely it came out of the cup? So I measured out my 1/3 cup of oil. I poured most of it in. I poured the rest of it into the 1/2 cup for the honey, swished it around, emptied it, and then put my honey in. We're going to mix these together just so that they're blended together, and then we're going to add vanilla and our 2 eggs. So the oil and the honey are mixed together. I'm going to put in a teaspoon of vanilla extract, and you always want to use extract rather than flavoring, and then 2 eggs. 1, 2. And then you're going to mix those together until they're all blended. Now again, if you don't have a stand mixer, that's fine. You can just mix together with a fork or with a hand mixer. That would work fine, but just make sure everything is thoroughly incorporated. All right, these are well mixed together, and it's time to add our bananas. Now, I think the original recipe said mashed bananas, but you know, I really don't mind if I bite into a big chunk of banana in banana bread. So what I do is just break it into bigger chunks like this, and the mixing process is what's going to mash it up for you. So you don't need to spend time getting another bowl dirty when you can just put it in like this and then put the mixer on, and it will do the mashing for you. I'll turn it up quite a bit so that you can see how they're mashing. Now we're ready to add the flour and the salt. 1 3/4 cups of flour. And again, it can be whole wheat, it can be all-purpose, it can be unbleached flour or bleached. My preference, of course, is unbleached. And I've used 1/2 and 1/2. The only flour I have not used is bread flour. That would not be good for this recipe. But 1 3/4 cups, and a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And I usually just sprinkle it on. You don't need to mix it with the flour in advance. I'm going to stop the machine so I can add the rest of my flour. And you can see from the batter that it's not completely mixed yet, but you can see there are still some chunks of banana, which is great. Okay, now this is an interesting step. I guess this is 2 bowls because you're using a little cup or something for this water. You're going to take a 1/4 cup of water, and I just heated it up in the microwave. I didn't measure it there. If I had measured it, we could use the same bowl. And a teaspoon of baking soda. And you mix those together. And then you're going to add to the mixture that you already have. Now, I don't know if this is a holdover. This is an old recipe, so I don't know if this is a holdover from when baking soda needed to be activated or something like that, but rather than just adding water and baking soda separately, I always melt it the way they say in the recipe, and then I mix those in. That's going to make the batter pretty runny, which is fine. We've still got nuts to add, and if you want to make it extra banana-y, you certainly could add another banana at this point, but for us, this is the perfect consistency. Now we add walnuts to our banana bread, but again, if pecans are more your style or no nuts, that's fine too. The recipe calls for 1/2 cup. This is a whole cup. So that's our preference, is just to make it very nutty, and they really don't need to be chopped very fine. In fact, we like biting into the nuts just as much as the bananas. So whatever works with your taste. But this is about as fine as I chop them in order to get them in. Add them to the batter and mix. So the batter is all ready. Now we're ready to put it into our pans. Now, normally, this 9-inch loaf pan is what I use, and I will put parchment paper on the bottom and around the edges. However, I bought some new pans the other day. This one is a little bit smaller. You can see it's smaller than the 9-inch. So what I'm going to do is fill this 8-inch pan and this little mini pan to give away to someone, okay? So these two are going to be the same as a 9-inch equivalent. Now, to get parchment paper in the bottom, typically what I'll do is take a Sharpie marker and make myself an outline, and then I cut right inside the marker line so that it doesn't have any chance of transferring, and put that right in the bottom of your pan, just like that. Okay, so it probably, in this nonstick pan, it probably doesn't really need a parchment. However, if it's at least on the bottom, it's going to come out of the pan a little bit easier. So that's what I'll do in this pan on both of these, and then we'll be ready to put the batter in and put them in the oven. All right, so what we're going to do is just fill up the small one here, and I'm starting with a spoon just so that I have a little bit more control. We'll make it about a half full, and then we'll move over to the other. We can do all the rest. Okay, so putting your first spoonful of batter in with a spoon helps to keep the parchment paper stuck down, and then you can use a spatula for the rest. I'll add a little bit more to the small one. Okay, so here we are with our 8-inch loaf pan and our mini loaf pan. We're going to put them in the oven. The oven has been preheating to 325. We'll get them in the oven and they will stay there for about an hour. It's a rather low oven, so they're going to stay for about an hour. We'll check them at about 50 minutes, especially the small one. We'll be checking maybe at 45 minutes and making sure that it's not over baking. So here we go. If you found yourself saying, "Whoa, that was fun to know, I can't wait to try this," then I hope you'll consider liking and subscribing to the channel. We don't do videos on cooking all the time. We cover travel and products and some interviews and some tips. So if this is your first time joining us, thanks for joining, and we'll get this bread in the oven. So we've set the oven for 325. We're going to set the timer for 45 minutes. And we've put them in on the top shelf, well, about a third of the way down, and we will test them at the 45-minute mark. Okay, it's been 45 minutes. We're going to test the small one. I'm using a cake tester that was my grandmother's. It's probably literally 100 years old, but it's by far the best thing to use. You can use a toothpick though, that works just fine. Oh, they're looking really good. This one's not quite done yet, but oh yes, the small one is just perfect. So we'll leave this one in for another 10 minutes. You need to cool this thoroughly at least for half an hour before you slice it. So I'm going to put it on the cooling rack and we'll slice into them much later on. The little tiny one came out perfectly. I'm not going to cut into it obviously because it's going to be a gift for a neighbor. But here's what the larger one looks like. So if you're going to use a 9-inch pan, that whole recipe will fill a 9-inch pan, or the 8-inch loaf pan and a smaller one. We like to have fun in the kitchen, and so if you haven't checked out this video, please do that next. We'll look forward to seeing you in that video or the next one. Have a wonderful week ahead.